Hi, so let's look at another example of tips and tricks of SPSS charts. This time we're looking at creating charts from tables. That means creating charts from the values contained within SPSS output itself when it's represented in tabular form. Now obviously when you're working with SPSS and you're working with a chart builder, you know that you can create charts where values such as percentiles or frequency counts or percentages or 95% confidence intervals are represented, as well as things like time values. But that's a relatively small proportion of all of the statistical output that SPSS will generate in tabular form. And it turns out it's very easy to create charts or graphically represent that output using the creating charts from tables function within SPSS viewer window. Let's have a look at how we do that. To illustrate how we're going to create a chart from some output, we're actually going to run a linear regression and use this function to graphically represent some of the coefficients that's produced in the regression output. So I've got this example here where we're trying to predict current salary using information such as gender, whether or not the respondent is a manager, their starting salary, their age, their education, and their time in the job. We don't really know at this stage which variables have the biggest impact upon the regression equation, which ones are contributing most to that. We get that from the beta coefficient column, the standardized B column within the SPSS linear regression output. Let's see how we can get that output, and let's see how we can represent it graphically. So to do so, I'm just going to go to Analyze, down to Regression, down to Linear here. I specify my dependent, my target field. I pull in all these other fields. These two categorical fields are actually binary, so they're fine. And I happen to know that all of these variables actually significantly contribute towards the regression equation. So I'm actually just going to run with the enter method. If I click OK at that point, we get some output here. We can see the R-square value is quite high. Adjusted R-square here, 0.835. That means 83% of the variation in the dependent variable can be accounted for using the independent variables. So here they all are. And here are the values that we're trying to graphically represent. The larger these numbers, the larger these numbers in terms of magnitude, the greater the impact they have, the greater the contribution they have upon the regression equation itself. Before we do so, a good tip is to actually get rid of some of the output here. So if I double click on this and just get rid of this value here of 1, and I just delete it. Just delete it so it isn't shown. It just means that that output then isn't prefixed with the value 1. So when I do a chart, it doesn't say one manager, one salary, and one age, and one. It just gets rid of it. In the same sense, I can actually get rid of the title here, coefficients, and that just means that the title of the chart we're going to produce says standardized coefficients rather than coefficients and standardized coefficients. So it's just a little tip there. You can actually clean up and get rid of stuff. You can obviously highlight bits here and delete them as you're going along. So you can graph any of this sort of output. I'm actually going to highlight this bit here, right click on it and say create graph. I'm going to ask it to represent it as a bar chart. We click a bar chart. Here is the output that's generated. There it is. So you can see each of these coefficients are represented as bar charts. I'm now going to double click on it. And I'm just going to click on the categories along the bottom here. And I'm actually going to sort the categories in descending order of the statistic itself, so we can see the most important variables first. So we hit apply, and then we can see beginning salary, manager, month since hire, education level in years, gender of employee, and age in order of their loading, if you like, in order of their importance upon the dependent variable. Age has a bigger effect actually than education level or gender, to be fair. Probably a bigger effect here than month since hire, but it's a minus value, meaning that the older you are, actually the less people are earning. And I can then click close and highlight, click on these bars themselves, and ask it to just put some values on there, so showing me the actual coefficient values. It's the coefficient values. And if I want to edit the bars, people often want to go into the fill and border here, and they often want to put a black border around it. Even though it looks like there's a border there, it doesn't show up, and that's because the weight is equal to 0. If you change that to just 1 and hit apply, it actually puts a little border around it, and obviously you can change the colors as well. So you can hit apply at that point, change that, and there we have it. That's our standardized coefficient beta column in our regression output, now generated and turned into a bar chart, so we're representing it graphically.